In the summer of 2017, Treyarch released their Zombies Chronicles DLC for Call of Duty Black Ops 3, containing ground-up remasters of every Black Ops 1 DLC map. Except for one. Call of the Dead. Now, Call of the Dead is one of my favourite zombies maps, because to see it left out of the DLC was a little disappointing. A year prior, however, Treyarch released mod tools for Black Ops 3, so players could create their own zombies maps and upload them to the Steam Workshop. So seeing as they left Call of the Dead out of Zombies Chronicles, I decided, you know what? Why don't I just make it myself? So let's start from the beginning, because the story of how this map was made is not as straightforward as you might think. I started working on the map in January 2022 as a way to learn how to use the mod tools. Prior to starting work on this map, I had no knowledge of game development or how to use the tools at all. I had no idea what I was doing, and the first version of this map was very shoddy. The proportions for each of the areas were way off what they were supposed to be. I didn't really know how to use brushes or patches to their fullest extent, so the majority of the map was just built up from preset models. It's not my greatest work, but at the time I was proud of it, and this version proved to me that what I was trying to do was possible. I posted a screenshot of the map in the Mod Tools Discord server just showing off what I was working on when I received a DM from a person that would become a key player in the Call of the Dead project. Now, unbeknownst to me, I was not the only person working on Call of the Dead at the time, and behind the scenes a team of mappers had been working on this map for years. DMAC442 and Hooded Sniper 177. DMAC showed me work in progress videos and screenshots of the version that they were working on, and let me tell you, I was out of my depth. Their version of the map was rich with detail. It truly looked barren and desolate like it was supposed to. It blew what I was working on out of the water. So at this point, I just thought, well, that's it. These guys have clearly got it on lock. There's no need for me to bother. I'll just pack it up and leave it at that. There was just one tiny little problem. Hooded Sniper had all of the map files, and he was nowhere to be seen. This absolutely beautiful version of the map had been completely inaccessible for months. No one was working on it, and so DMAC had approached me to help restart the project. So I scrapped the version that I was working on, and we started again. From scratch. It all started with the lighthouse. This is the first area we worked on as a team for the new Call of the Dead remaster. During this time, DMAC taught me a lot about mapping and how to use Radiant more efficiently. Up until this point, I had just been going in blind and teaching myself slowly by just clicking things and seeing what they do. DMAC taught me how to use patches, prefabs, selecting individual faces, a whole host of techniques that I still use today. He taught me how to rip models from other games, how to use geos to get the proportions of the map correct, and how to light scenes more naturally. We spent hours and hours just messing around in Radiant and working on the lighthouse. While I was working on the main lighthouse, DMAC was working on the living quarters and the bunker. We actually worked on a few different projects together during this time, including a remake of Firing Range. However, they all fell through because as the Call of the Dead project started to pick up pace, it very quickly consumed both of our lives. There would be days during this time where we literally didn't do anything else. We got up, worked on Call of the Dead, went to bed. And because the coronavirus was still very much at large, we didn't really have anything else to do. After finishing the lighthouse, it was on to working on the boat. DMAC tackled the front half of the ship while I focused on the back half. Now it might seem a bit strange to be jumping around like this, but DMAC still had some of the prefabs from when he was working with Sniper, and he wanted to get them out of the way since the boat was easily the most time-consuming part of this entire process. It took around a month to complete, and the back half of the ship was the first area that I worked on alone. All of the skills that I'd learned from the lighthouse had been put into practice here, and I was very proud of how this turned out in the end. If you compare this to the version that I'd done just a few months prior, you could tell that I was improving very quickly, and it got us excited for what was to come. We started talking about ideas and what we actually want the map to be, whether we wanted to do it one-to-one exactly the same or change some things around. Now, the original plan for this map was actually to do a sort of alternate reality version, where you were playing as the Ultimus crew, similar to the mobile version of Call of the Dead. We ended up scrapping this pretty early on, but it was the same idea that DMAC had with Hooded Sniper, and we actually made mock-ups of what this would look like. Sniper made a loading screen for it and everything. It was clear this is not the direction we wanted to take the map though, and favoured a more faithful remaster. The only key difference really being the addition of Gobblegums. We wanted to include them as they're included in every single Black Ops 3 map. And since this remaster was going for a Zombies Chronicles style, we wanted to include them on the map. They also just add a lot more variety and replayability to the maps they're featured on. It was around this time we started to get other people involved in the project to help speed up production, and for the next few months we were absolutely flying. DMAC created the spawn area while I worked on the rest of the mountainside all the way around to Speed Cola and Stamina. Now, this original version of the mountain was not particularly great. I actually went back and redid it later on down the line. I just wasn't happy with the way that it looked. It wasn't formed very cohesively, and to be honest, it was just a bunch of models thrown together into the vague shape of a mountain. And when I went back and redid it later on down the line, I put a lot more thought into the structure of it and the way the paths flow down the mountainside. And it looks a lot more realistic. I'm so glad I went back and redid it later on. You can still see the original mountainside in old promotional videos that we released for the map, as well as Conjura's Custom Zombies reveal event. Speaking of which, it was around this time that we started posting teasers of the map on Twitter, which in retrospect is kind of ballsy considering the map wasn't actually playable at the time that these teasers were going out. In fact, many of the areas hadn't even been clipped yet, so you could just fall through the terrain at any point while playing. And none of the map's features had been scripted yet, so this was essentially just a Call of the Dead shaped sandbox that we were promoting. And it was around this time as well that things started to go wrong with the project, and we didn't even know if we were going to be able to finish it. We had posted that this map would be out before the end of the year, and it was around June time where DMAC took a step back from the project to focus on some stuff in his personal life. This meant that for the rest of the development, I was now leading the project by myself. And with only a few months of experience at this point, this was no easy feat. The map was still in no way fit for release, and I had an absolute mountain to climb if I wanted to get this out before the end of the year. And the first big hurdle was the map's scripting. Neither me nor DMAC actually knew how to script at the time. We got help from some of DMAC's friends for the Wonder Weapons and George, but as for the rest of the map, I was on my own, and so I had to teach myself how to code very quickly, otherwise we were not going to be able to hit this deadline. The first thing scripted for the map was actually the flinger. I chose to do the flinger first because it's something that has quite simple functionality with not a lot of different variables that can go wrong. I actually still have the first version of the flinger that I made for Call of the Dead on my test map, and as you can see, as a first attempt for scripting, it was not particularly well made. But it worked, and as I learned more and more about the ins and outs of scripting for Black Ops 3, I kept going back and iterating it into the version that's in the map today. Now, after completing the flinger, it was on to working on some of the more complicated elements of the map's features, the most complicated of which being the freezing water and the lighthouse. Now, if you've played this map, which, if not, the link's in the description, it's free to play if you've got Black Ops 3, you'll know that the water in this map actually feels a little bit different than it does in the original. That's because the water in this map is actually a reused asset from Origins. I used TrioxScript for the mud as the basis for the slowing down mechanic of the water, and then just incorporated some new functions for the freezing texture overlay, and making it so the player couldn't actually move if they stayed in it for too long. Fast forward to August and I'd finished most of the map's mechanics, and it was time to add the Wonder Weapons and George into the mix. When I first received them, they were still quite bare bones, and required a lot of work to get them up to the point they're at today. George, for example, was missing a lot of animations and sounds, and the mechanic of him converting other zombies into electric zombies or super sprinters was missing entirely. So I had to spend some time adding this stuff in myself and incorporating him into my freezing water script. The VR11 had also originally been completely reworked to function in an entirely different way. The plan originally was to just basically turn it into a monkey bomb launcher, where when you shot a zombie with it, it would turn them into a timed explosive that every other zombie would swarm around. This effect was still kept for the final version of the VR11, but I decided to make it a bit more like the original. So it still turned the zombies into humans and that human would still run away, but every other zombie on the map would chase that person down, and after a while the person would still explode, killing any zombies that were nearby. This made the VR11 a bit more powerful than it was in the original map, which is a good thing I think because it sucks. The scavenger was pretty much perfect when I was sent it. Planet did a great job with it. The only change I made to the scavenger from the original map is that in this version it does infinite damage. This is something that loads of people had requested on Twitter, because in the original map the wonder weapons fall off hard, and it makes it very difficult to progress. And with that, the map was completely playable for the first time in this entire process. The only thing left to add was the main Easter egg. I scripted the Easter egg by first doing all of the steps individually on my test map. I did this so that I could test each step independently of each other, instead of having to run through it every single time. And then once all of the quest's components were complete, I simply placed them into the main map and added checks to make sure that the previous step was done before you could do the current one. The only thing I really changed about the Easter egg is the dial step. I changed the way that they turn when you activate them, which I kind of regret now. I did it to make the step a little bit easier to understand, but because people were so used to how it worked before, it ended up just confusing more people. If I went back and did it again now, I probably wouldn't have changed this step. Now at this point I was starting to feel a little bit worried. We were nearing the end of the year, and while yeah, the map was functionally finished, it still wasn't looking its best, and there were a lot of bugs that needed ironing out before it was ready to go public. On top of this, I was also working on a lot of side Easter eggs that I wanted to add to the map, but due to wanting to have it out before the end of the year, a few of these had to be scrapped, including an extension to the main Easter egg, which ended up just getting reworked into the Samantha's Lullaby Easter egg. A description for what this was supposed to be is still readable in the map script, the idea being that upon completing the main Easter egg, there'd be a way to use the lighthouse light to flash SOS, to signal a passing ship to come and pick you up and save you. It was going to be a sort of Easter egg that ends the game type deal, like the showdown on Mob of the Dead. The ship that picks you up is actually still included in the map. You can see it passing by every now and then in the distance. Over the next few months I just spent time polishing the map and getting it ready for release. I went back and redid quite a few of the areas. The characters' player models got reworked in this time as well. The map was looking so much better. And then December rolled around, and the time had finally come for the map to go live. We got Chromastone 10 on board to do the trailers, which we were really grateful for. He did quite a lot of custom zombies trailers before this, and they were always top quality. There was no better guy for the job. He did 2 trailers for the map, which we released just a few weeks apart. I was still worried about the map not being ready before release, and so when it came to announcing a release date, I literally chose the last day of the year, the New Year's Eve of 2022, and I worked on it all the way up until the last day. The day of the release was so nerve-wracking. I made sure to get up early and upload the map to the workshop hours in advance. People started streaming that day specifically to play this map, so I didn't want to let anyone down by having to delay the release because I couldn't upload it due to some unforeseen circumstance. Everything went smooth, however, and at 6 PM on the 31st of December 2022, Call of the Dead was finally released.
This is the remaster we've all been looking for. Just look at how beautiful this is, ladies and gentlemen. There is George Romero. I am so excited to get into this.
Call of the Dead. This is a brand new map that just came out. Dude, this is so sick. Oh my. There he is, the boy.
We're in, dude. Let's go. Oh my goodness. And there he is.
Holy crap, it looks beautiful. I actually got done playing Tag the Totem the other day, and this is already a night and day difference. This looks stunning.
Now the map wasn't without its issues at launch, but watching people finally play it after working on it for so long was so much fun. People were so helpful with reporting bugs and things in the days post-release, and the vast majority of the issues with the map got fixed in follow-up updates later that week. And that's it. That's the story of how the Call of the Dead remaster came to be. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much. This is my first time trying something like this, so I really appreciate you sticking around till the end. I'm planning on making more videos like this in the future, so be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more. And I may make a part 2 to this where I go over how I remastered Mob of the Dead as well, and how that map actually ended up getting featured in Call of Duty Black Ops 6. I'm not kidding. But for now, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.